Welcome to the Queer Witch Project, your resource for all things queer and witchy. I am Damona Peacock, a fabulous, non-binary, neurospicy, ordained queerdo with a fascination for all things cycle, symbolism, and patterns.
And I'm Moonkittee, your queer femme, poly kitchen witch, and proud geek. Today's topic is queer oracle and intuition decks, and a little bit more. So, we just finished a huge series on the tarot and queer tarot,
Yay!
which was good. And I hopefully, if you let's go back and listen to it, it's a four-part series. This is the fifth-ish, I guess if you want to call it, the fifth of a four-part series, where we're kind
I
of
love
talking about
that.
this slightly different aspect of it that both you and I both read oracle decks as well as tarot decks. And when we were talking about the tarot, we were very specific about a type of tarot that we were going into, whereas oracle is completely different and it's a lot more freeform.
Yeah. And, we thought that we might visit a few little points that have to do with working with tarot and oracle in general,
Hmm.
really, um, as two practitioners do.
Hmm.
And since it's kind of our forte, why not make a couple more episodes about it? But let's start at the beginning with, what's the point of oracles anyway? Why do people seek oracle readings or tarot readings at all?
I think historically, oracle is in human nature to seek answers, right? Going back to ancient Greeks, you hear about the oracle at Delphi. You hear a lot about kings and kingdoms or priests looking for the sage wisdom of something else, to see beyond, to see to the higher power. And when we're talking about tarot as a divination tool, as a methodology for seeking that kind of wisdom from outside yourself, that external wisdom, you get that in oracle decks and oracle aspects as well. So, oracle, I guess in some ways, the idea of an oracle actually predates tarot in a lot of ways, but that the constant seeking of knowledge for oracle is something that's just part of human nature and human history going back eons.
I do think that it's within human nature to want to plan ahead
Hmm.
and to procure information that helps us do that. Even though we like to say that tarot doesn't tell the future, I think it can read energy enough that you can predict the patterns or predict like possible things that could come out of what's happening now. And so, in a way, it leads you to the future. But you mentioned the oracle at Delphi, Apollo's oracles, and I know that a lot of people talk about like it being engraved, this one phrase that we talk about, which is know thyself. And I always feel like having my oracles read or reading oracles is taking that moment and setting it aside to sit with yourself, sit with whatever higher power you subscribe to, and ask for wisdom to be received, being opening yourself, opening up to be receptive to whatever inner wisdom, higher wisdom. You talked about it being like an outside source so we can seek like this wisdom outside of ourselves, but I always think it's really just a reminder of the wisdom that's inside of us. I think it's symbolic so much because it's supposed to clue us back into ourselves as opposed to seeking out a priest or a witch doctor or whatever, shamans. The idea of these higher spiritual beings cures our soul or fixes our ailments, spiritual ailments. Sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes you need an elder. Sometimes you need some training and some guidance. But also sometimes we need to be not seeking that out of other humans and seeking it from within. And I think the tarot and the oracles are supposed to lead us to that. Sometimes you can't control what's being said by the oracle, but you are in full control of what that leads you to within yourself.
Hmm.
How you hear it, what wisdom that gives you, how you relate to what you're hearing. I think it's important to have those moments where we sit with ourselves, sit with some kind of symbolic wisdom that we've picked up somewhere along the way or through the
Hmm.
collective culture and consciousness, and have a check-in.
Hmm. So, with that, what's the difference between a tarot and an oracle deck?
I get this question a lot from people who are not in the world of tarot and oracle. Yeah, I like that question. My basic answer, and you probably have one that you give, but I basically say that tarot, an oracle or divination tool, that is hung on a predictable, agreed upon pattern
Hmm.
that's kind of formed over the years. It's definitely heavy on the symbolic language. It has multiple reinterpretations. It's one of the things I love about it so much is the variety,
Hmm.
but it's still hung upon this kind of agreed upon structure of a major arcana and a minor arcana. The minor
Hmm.
arcana are split into four elements and four, and then there's, the four elements have their numbers and they have their royalty cards or, and then
Hmm.
the major arcana has this predictable pattern. And some people kind of fudge with it and add an extra card or move some card numbers around a little bit. But it's always kind of an agreed upon structure.
Hmm.
Whereas oracle cards, they're not based on tarot.
Hmm.
They are still divination tools, but they're based on whatever the creator decided to base them on.
Hmm.
So they can be inspired by different concepts that aren't necessarily the exact pattern or hanger that is tarot.
Yeah, exactly. That's very, very similar. Is the way I would tend to see it is tarot has an agreed upon structure. Again, agreed upon loosely with flexibility and open to interpretation, but Oracle is a free form because I have just in my own collection, I know I have a crystals based oracle, I have a plant or herbalism based oracle, I have a kitchen witch oracle, I have an angels and ancestors oracle, I have a spirit guardians oracle, I have it can be liminal spaces oracle,
Hmm.
several of them actually at this point. There's so many different things
Yeah.
that an oracle can speak to, just like there's so many different aspects of our personalities that are outside the realm of the tarot,
Yeah.
where interests lie, where passions lie, where culture lies, where personalities and all of that kind of thing. So to me, I see Oracle as the everything else that's there.
And I will say, though, that as a reader, as a practitioner myself, um, every deck that I own has its own personality, and
Oh,
you build your own relationship to
thousand
it.
percent.
And some of the decks will become friends with one another, and
Hmm.
particularly the tarot likes to prepare themselves off of the oracles. And it's not a supposed to be a there's no gender thing about
Mm-mm.
this. It's not a gender thing, but it's sometimes I just really like to pair a particular oracle with a particular tarot deck because together they make such a cool approach to
Hmm.
answering divination questions that people may
Hmm.
have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's my favorite thing to do is to mix
Hmm.
them up. Is
Yeah.
to, well, not mix them up, but to share, to partner, to work in tangent. Sometimes I'll use three oracle decks and a tarot deck.
Hmm.
I don't usually use more than one tarot deck because why would you need more than one tarot deck, right?
Right.
So, but usually I'll pair them with, or throw in some different oracles, and I know you do too.
Yeah, and really, truly, it's like it depends on the nature of what I am reading and where I am going is what deck will come to me. But yeah, there's rarely there. I can think of a couple instances where I have used two different tarot decks because, like you said, every tarot deck has a personality, and some of mine are very strongly attuned to this deck is very attuned to love and health and home. And this one is very attuned to something more general guidance. But more often than not, I will choose multiple oracle decks and then pull a tarot deck of some sort with kind of a generalized thing into it. But every once in a while, I've pulled multiple tarots, but very rarely. It's usually multiple oracles because, again, you can get more hyper focused into what is the nature of the question that is being asked and in a lot of ways, what is the magical practice? What is the way that the person who is the querent has their magical practice? Because if they are more earth or fire based, then I'm going to do pull tarot that deals with it, oracles that work more with those kinds of energies together to get the kind of the information that comes out right. Everyone is different. Your mileage may vary and how you read, but that's just the way that I read.
Okay, 100% my favorite thing to do is when I have this deck over here and this deck over here and this thing over here, and I pull one from each and they all say something
This,
similar,
mm-hmm,
or yeah, like they all give it the same symbolism, and then like, okay,
exactly,
clearly this is meant to come through because I see it here, here, and here. You
exactly.
can't deny that the same message comes through from three different sources. Yeah. So really, Oracle, Tarot, if you had to choose, which one's better?
This I have a tiny bit of a rant on
Oh, give me.
with it because I think so often Oracle is easier. If you are a newbie coming in,
Mm,
tarot is daunting. It is
It's a little
78
intimidating.
cards. It's a lot to remember. It's a lot to manage. There's so much esoteric, like you said, symbology and trying to figure out what it is and everything else. Whereas Oracle is usually very straightforward. If there's an image, it'll tell you at the bottom of the card what
Mm,
that is and how it relates. And it's really easy, a word or a phrase that has an easy connotation to interpret. So I think for that reason, there's this kind of general feeling in the community, or there was, I think it's changed now, but once upon a time when I was growing up, that Oracle was for the beginners and tarot was for the
mhm.
experts. And therefore, if you read Oracle, you weren't a true tarot reader, that one true way kind of thing, which I think is complete and utter bullshit because, like we just said, they're two different entities. It's like saying, I make peanut butter and jelly and I make peanut butter and honey and my way is better and your way sucks. It's like, really,
Yeah.
no, they're both peanut butter based sandwiches. It's just your interpretation of which you like
Yeah,
better or which you prefer. And there are some times where you want half and half. It's really
exactly.
it's really up to you. But ultimately, and I have no idea where that metaphor came from, but that's my kitchen wish pass because that's what came in there. But ultimately, it really comes down to it is I have some Oracle decks that will grab me for what it is, and I have had
Yeah,
some tarot decks that have grabbed me.
yeah.
And it really kind of it's a matter of where I am at the moment, what wants to come through. And like you said, when I was streaming on Twitch and I was doing card pulls and tarot decks and readings and that kind of things, I would always compare it with an oracle, a tarot, and usually even a third methodology that we'll talk about a little bit later, but because it's is what works for you. So,
Yep.
there's my rant. What about you? Is one better than the other?
Like you said before, they all, you know, they have different personalities and some of them work for different purposes. So for me, it depends on who's asking. It depends on, you know, my mood. It depends on what's easily accessible. No, I'll go
Hmm.
seeking out a certain deck for a certain type of person for, or a certain friend of mine. So if it's somebody who knew Raven Moon, who is a
Hmm.
spiritual friend of mine who's passed away, but I inherited a deck or several actually from him. So if it's somebody within that community who was, you know, blessed by his love and energy and guidance, I'll bust out the Raven Moon deck. But if it's one of my Trash Panda people, I'll get the Raccoon deck, you know, and
Hmm.
or like you were saying, there's love and romance decks that are kind of more geared towards that. But like I have one that's more for shadow work
Hmm.
because that's just the vibe of it. So, how do I choose? There's, you know, there's no, neithers are better than the other. It really just depends on like what flavor of divination feels right for the moment, right for the circumstances.
Hmm.
And yeah, for me, none are better than the other. It just, I have my Mercury and Venus are both in Gemini. So I guess variety is the spice of life for me in all things, in many
Hmm.
things. Yeah.
And why would you choose one of the over the other? Because we mentioned we do use them both, but what do you get out of an oracle that's different than a tarot card, I guess? So why would you choose one of the over the other?
You're talking about easy versus hard. I do feel like the tarot makes you work harder.
Hmm.
Sometimes it will depend on how much energy I'm going to put into a reading, what the gain is, what the exchange is for me. If you're paying me generously for my time, I'm going to pour a lot of work into a reading I give to you. I will do a deep dive. I will build a big spread. I will pull from multiple decks, and I will pull from tarot because it does make you work harder a little bit sometimes. If I'm doing like freebies or,
Hmm.
you know, little pop-offs, one card pulls, three card spreads, you know, little nickel and dime kind of readings for a multitude of people, it's kind of a different energy flow. So then I would, you know, stick to things that maybe are a little bit more straightforward, a little bit more simplistic, or don't have to go as far in depth about interpreting the multitude of meanings under this one card in tarot,
Hmm.
right? Versus the oracle, which is like it, you know, you can get three oracle cards lined up that tell a really beautiful story.
Hmm.
So I guess it just again really, really depends on circumstances for me.
That makes
How do
sense.
you make your choices?
For me, it's similar in some ways. It's the nature of the query. If I know the question is something like along the lines of what information do I need to know right now?
Mm-hmm.
Or that kind of general kind of daily thing. Oftentimes I'll pull the
Check in.
oracle first, and that will give me a broad image of where I need to go and then I'll
Hmm.
pull the tarot as the steps to get there.
Interesting.
So I'll look at that as the goal and the path, with the goal being the oracle and the path being the tarot to get to it.
I like
And I
that.
have my Mercury and Venus in Capricorn, so you can see how that goal path orientation just kind of moves forward with you're talking about steady course, steady direction on something.
Now, when you get a new deck that you're really excited about, one great way to get to know it, I know you have your own approach, but for me, it's a card a day, one card a day, and see what's going on in your life and how it pertains to that one card. And then you put the card back in the deck. So if the same card keeps popping up, you build a relationship with that one card and you kind of see what's going on in your life where this card just keeps coming up for some reason. And eventually you kind of associate like a wisdom to that, and then
Mhm.
you always will have that relationship with that one card. Or, and I just think one a day offers enough focus to get to know a card, but enough variety to get to know a deck. What is your approach to a new deck? I like your approach too.
My approach to the deck, I do a full deck tarot spread, and I have different readings for tarot decks and oracle decks because, like I said, they're different but they're similar. And well, actually, as a teaser for next episode, we're going to go into and talk about different tarot decks and spreads. So I'll save and put a pin in what I do until next episode.
All right.
But just know that for that, I do have a very specific thing that I do with the tarot deck and the oracle deck to give me a general feel. And then from there, it's more a matter of the more I work with it, the more I get a really more intimate feel of what I am going to do with it, how and when it needs to come out, and all of that. So it really it depends. So again, I tend to be more literal minded, literal focused with the way my energy is. So I draw a map and I do an outline and a plan, and that is the very earth sign thing to do when we're talking about communication. So
If I can read on my own, I am a
mhm.
tarot reader, I do tarot, I can do oracle, then why would I need to get a reading from someone else?
Perspective, because oftentimes for me, if I'm doing a reading on my own and I get a reading, I will oftentimes have someone else do a reading, not to contradict, but it's that second opinion thing. Because
Fair?
oftentimes it's the tarot likes to slap you in the face with what you already know,
Yep.
and oracle as well. So with both of those, they do. They're not going to tell you anything that you don't already know. You just may not want to actually deal with it. Now, sometimes it's a lot nicer to get that from somebody else, because the idea of if you're going to someone, there's this natural assumption, whether it's true or not, that you're going to go to someone and they're going to give you information in a way that's palatable to you.
I
So
like that.
oftentimes, and if you don't have an established relationship with a reader, or you don't come in saying, I want a heavy hitting reading, that's going to come out a lot more gentle, and a lot more civil, or just kind of a little bit more softened than
Maybe.
then sometimes you get when you've got a deck that you've worked with for years and it knows you and it knows to give you no nonsense. And sometimes you need a little bit of a softer reading. And that's where going to someone will do that. And there's other times where I am genuinely stuck and I'm pulling cards that reflect that I am genuinely stuck. And I can't for the life of me figure out what the connections are between these. So going to someone else for that outside perspective.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I can pull cards and read their interpretations till I'm blue in the face, but sometimes I need to hear it from an outside source. Like you said, the
Hmm.
perspective. We have blinders on when we're too close to the source. So
Hmm.
even with myself, I've got my own blinders on. And you said an outside perspective can be more gentle. And honestly, sometimes an outside perspective can be more direct. I can say things as a reader to you who's paying me for a reading. It's I guess it's kind of, masochistic, but or sadistic, I don't know. But I could just be blunt. I could just be like, "Hey, it's not me, blame the cards. Don't blame the messenger, blame the cards." But the cards are saying straight up, dump him. Like this isn't
Hmm.
good for you. Or, whatever, something like that. It could be harsh.
Hmm.
And I'll just say, like sometimes you in that container, you can say what needs to be said because it's respected, because it's an approach that people are receptive to, and they can hear the harsh truths. And sometimes I need someone to hand me that harsh truth that I myself have a block up against hearing, or like I said, I'm too close to the source or
Hmm.
whatever. So for me as a practitioner, I am very picky
Hmm.
about who I go to.
Mm-hmm.
and I have my favorite people, and they have to meet my standards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I will definitely seek the wisdom. Sometimes, do you think that's rude if you pull your own reading and you're like, ask friend, maybe yes, but reader, I think maybe if you're not paying them, it's kind of rude to say, "Hey, I pulled these cards. Can you tell me what they mean?"
I think if I was going to do that, and I have done that, like with you and other friends,
Yes.
if it's someone I'm close to and a friend, I will do that. If I was going to someone who was a paid tarot reader and I was approaching them with that, I would still pay them for their time and their wisdom. So it
And
wouldn't be
also, as a
something,
reader, I would say that's sometimes really hard for us because we don't have that deck. We don't have a relationship
yeah.
with that deck. We don't know those cards. And you're showing me a picture of a big spread, and I'm not seeing like the details of the cards. So I
Hmm.
could try. You could tell me what they said, what because some people would be like, somebody gave me this reading and it didn't resonate, and I don't know, and like I could try to help you out, but like, or I could just give you a reading with my cards, and that's more straightforward and easier for me
Hmm.
to interpret. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it just depends. But yeah, definitely I've had like I pulled these three cards together and I think it means this, but like I definitely need an outside perspective and you're my
Hmm.
friend and you know what's going on. So can you are you getting from this what I'm getting from this? And I love having that little anchor point and that
Hmm.
little affirmation of like, yeah, bitch, you need to hear that shit.
Right. And again, the different perspectives. So in that case, I would like that. I wouldn't look at the cards themselves. I would look at what the card is. So if it's like you pull the Three of Swords, the Lover's card, and something else, I may not need to see something else on them, but I can take a look based on my experience of dealing with those cards and say, here's my interpretation, whether it's true or not, and the lens that it was through is here's what I know of these cards, here's how they come through in my deck, and here's what it means to me. But you're hearing it through my lens, not me pulling the cards.
Which is a lot easier to do with tarot than it would be to a random oracle.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It would be nearly impossible to do with an Oracle deck, just
unless
because
you're
of the
already
nature.
familiar.
Unless you're already
Yeah,
familiar, or if it's an Oracle deck that's again based on something that's very has already set rules and guidelines. So again, I have an Oracle
right.
deck that is essentially lots of different stones, crystals, and stones.
Yeah.
So if you told me you pulled an amethyst and a rose quartz, I could tell you what the nature of those properties are based on those. But that's such a highly specific thing that it's you don't come across that very often.
Okay, so Oracle divination, tarot, Oracle decks. Are there any other cartomancy type divination that we haven't really, talked about or that you would want to
Mhm.
cover?
There are a couple different cartomancy is of course the idea of just divination through the use of cards. That is what
Oh,
cartomancy is, with tarot and oracle being the most common. There are other ones that are out
I've seen
there.
people use playing cards as
Yeah,
their, yeah.
playing cards that comes out of honestly out of the Marseille tarot,
Okay.
which the root of most modern tarot and playing card structures, both of them come out of the Marseille tarot card game, cartomancy kind of thing that came out of the 15th, 16th century Italian roots, but also Spanish and French and that whole kind of area time frame. And that is really with the Marseille Tarot, it has a 22 trump cards, which mimic the major arcana, and 52 suit cards, which major your playing cards. Because again, it's spades, diamonds, slightly different words, coins, but same kind of thing essentially as your playing cards and your minor arcana. So that's it. The root of tarot generally is thought to come from the Tarot of Marseille. So
Interesting.
that is one that is still out there and can be used. The other one that I've come across quite a bit, I don't know much about. I've bought several books and I need to do it, but time is not quite right for me to do it yet. But I want to do it because I keep collecting books on it and information on it is Lenormand.
And see, I've only just heard of it, and I've had my hands on a deck, and I'm just like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah, the Lenormand Tarot is another one. And it's a unique set of initially 36 to up to 54 cards
Oh,
that have simple imagery and relate to aspects of life such as money and health. And they're very specific. I think if you're
oh,
going to talk about you're going to be hit by a pickup truck next Thursday kind of thing. That's more Lenormand, actually,
interesting.
in the structure of where it is versus kind of the overall perspective, like we've talked about with tarot, or the RWS based tarot. Because again, there's also the Thoth tarot, which is completely different in structure than RWS, which Neither, I don't know much about, I don't know if you know much about that, but I have no interest in it because of the nature of Aleister Crowley and the whole Golden Dawn
It's all
stuff.
patriarchal BS
Right.
sometimes.
So
I've
I have
just
no interest
missed
in that.
things for reasons.
But yeah, no, there's a lot
Yeah.
of different kind of cartomancy that can be out there, but those are the big ones I would say, that are out there with realistically tarot and RWS tarot and oracle being the main that you see. When you think tarot decks, that's what you think of.
So, beyond cartomancy, what are other divination tools, oracle tools, things that you've used, things that you like, things that you have experience with?
There's so much divination tools and things out there. Keeping it in the idea of an oracle, in that it is something that you go to get wisdom, drawing it back to the initial idea of the historical purpose, to go to find wisdom of and sage information about what's coming, what's happening, and understanding the circumstances and cycles around you. Beyond the basic cartomancy, the one that I found an interest in and love for was I Ching, which sounds weird. I acknowledge I'm a white Caucasian woman, also trying not to step on cultural boundaries, though I have been told by several I Ching practitioners that it is an open practice, and so until I hear otherwise, I will study it and learn it. I will not exploit that and use it to someone else. But it's a practice, an ancient Chinese practice known as the Book of Changes, and it uses coins or initially yarrow stalks, and you throw them, and the combination of how the coins land, heads up, heads down, the angles of the yarrow create combinations of six into make up to 64 hexagrams that are then interpreted through the Book of Changes and correspond to elements. Earth, air, fire, water also has like lake and thunder and heaven and earth,
Interesting.
and it's a completely different system that's outside of, but something about it, even from baby witch opening times, has drawn me in. So I've practiced that over time. So that's one of them. What do you think? Oh, more.
I have a friend who's really into using pendulums. It's never been my
Hmm.
thing, but they're very drawn to it. And that's kind of a more basic, you kind of more ask it just like yes or no questions,
Hmm.
or you get more basic kind of answers at this or that. And the way the pendulum swings or circles can give you an answer. You just kind of set up the premise and then you ask the question and you just hold the pendulum in a particular way that gives you some kind of answer. And then I know one of my friends who's really into pendulums has a mat. Like it's a
Hmm.
mat that, and it's kind of like a little bit like a Ouija board in a
Hmm.
way, where the pendulum can swing to certain responses or letters or numbers or whatever.
Hmm.
And again, you can set up the premise and ask questions and see what kind of answer you get. And I think that's a kind of an interesting way of tapping into a divination message, but it's
Hmm.
not something I personally have experience with other than letting my friend read for me.
Hmm. I have done some pendulum work. Generally, if I want a down and dirty quick yes or no answer, it's a pendulum. And I've done that for years. The other one that I naturally do, and it came out of way back in PantheaCon when we were going, and my first foray into divination, they had a divination hospitality suite, and they had a tarot deck
Mm.
exchange and a bunch of raffle prizes where they were giving off a bunch of things. And in one of those, I got this bag of charms. Now,
Hmm.
inside this bag, inside this little tin of a bunch of charms, there was no book. There was nothing on it at all. It just said on the outside, it said Lenormand chart, tying back to that Lenormand aspect again that keeps
Hmm.
drawing me in and picking me up, but it gave me nothing. It gave me no guidelines, no books, nothing about it, except it was a bag of different charms. So from that point, it literally became something that I had to create
Yeah.
imagery for these charms and what each charm meant. And over the course of the last 10 years, that has redeveloped, and I have bought additional charms to add to it. I've taken some of the charms that were in it out because they didn't resonate with me. So I've created my own bag of charms that I always pair with my readings,
Readings.
because there's something that goes with that too, because again, it's a different perspective. And if I pull a bicycle versus pull an airplane or a hot air
Hmm.
balloon, all three of them are journeys. And it's the idea of taking a journey, but it's a matter of what speed are you going at. Where are you at on your journey? Are you taking hot air balloon where it's very slow and scenic? Are you bicycle where you're actively engaged in it? Or are you on an airplane where you're just shooting off into something? So there's really a lot of depth and nuance to three charms that can mean the same thing about journey or travel or trying to seek to start something, but it's really a matter of customizing this kind of charm aspect to give me the nuance of what it's going to be.
Your charm readings are one of my most favorite things that you do. I don't see a lot of other people doing it. I feel like you've developed it into your own thing, and
Hmm.
I love that idea that people can do that, can make,
Hmm.
their own, because it's about how what wisdom you gain from this symbol.
Hmm. Yeah, I've come across one other charm reader, and we both kind of looked at each other
Nice.
going, "Oh my God, I really don't see that much." So while it's a thing, because I do it, it's not a very
Hmm.
popular one.
Yeah, but I love it. I love watching you do it. I think I love getting charms pulled for me. It's really fun. I know another one that, again, I'm not personally familiar with, but I know people do, and I know someone in the community who has done a lot with it. In fact, has written a book about it, is tea leaf readings,
Hmm.
tea leaf divination, the magic we've talked about with the kitchen witchery, the
Hmm.
magic of tea and like the earthiness and the elemental, all these aspects that go into just drinking tea and making the self-care, really also
Hmm.
that personal empowerment of just taking, that in and then getting some kind of divination experience through that. I'm pretty sure it's Tea Magic by Janae Marantate. And it is Tea Magic. The publisher is Llewellyn, and she has her own tea business, and it's like amazing, delicious
It
loose leaf
is,
teas,
yes.
like
I have
kitchen
so many kitchen witch
witchery.
teas.
She has teas, she has seasoning. Like seriously, check her out because she's like amazing. Yeah.
So, is there anything we missed? I know that we could talk about different types of again, divination tools, and we've done that, but really we wanted to kind of focus, like I said, on this one with the idea of oracle decks, because we both think it's something that completely misunderstood and is such a useful tool. And I just don't
Oh
want
my God.
any people who are new baby witches out there, and I say that with love and things, not to think that one is better, that you're not being successful enough because you're reading oracle instead of tarot. That is so not true. It is such a
Well,
useful tool. It's such good guidance.
and like what you were saying is it can be so misunderstood. Somebody once, I was doing an event, which it was a tarot circle event, and somebody was like, "Oh, I've never done this. It's always seen it as something that was like satanic or, whatever." And it's very much not scary. It's
Mm-mm.
not that. It's not going to tell you you're about to die in 6 months. Like that's your doctor's job. Sorry about
Mm-hmm.
it, babe. Not the tarot reader's job. But it really is super approachable. It's not a big scary thing. You can take it a little bit at a time. Here's my big thing is you don't have to memorize the meaning of the cards.
Mm-hmm.
There is no shame in reading the book.
Mm-mm.
Sometimes I will give a reading, I'll sit down with someone, I'll give a reading, and I'll tell them what I think the cards mean, and then we'll together all go sit down and read the book entry, and then it usually just affirms that I said the right things that I needed to say. But
Mm-hmm.
that's just because I'm good at what I do.
I will often do the same for that
Yeah.
reason is I will give my interpretation of what I see and then I will go to the author because tarot decks and oracle decks are pieces of art and everything is seen through the lens of the creator and I'm reading it through my own experiences and my own lens, but what is the lens that it was written in? So going back and reading the book is incredibly important, I think,
And
especially
then
when you're talking about any sort of variant off of the standard RWS. I mean, there's so many remakes and reprints and holographic colors of the traditional RWS cards. You don't necessarily need to think of it off of that. But if you're talking about any of the decks that we'll be talking about in our next episode, reading the author's work and what their interpretations are important.
yeah, and so often when I'm reading for someone else, I also like to add in that moment of like, what does this symbolism mean to you? What is
Hmm.
or what sticks out about all of these? What sticks out the most to you? And then we can hone in on that because there's something significant to that because it's what's reaching out to them, it's what's catching their attention, it's what's calling to them. They'll say, "Oh, look at all those ravens. Like I have a personal relationship with ravens. I take care of them," or like they mean this to me, or they speak to me like this, or or it could be any symbol, but
Hmm.
like always invite in who you're reading for and what their connections are to things.
Hmm.
Like I could be like, well, this butterfly to me always means regeneration or phoenix energy. But then somebody else could be like, well, every time I see butterflies, it's like my dead dad is saying hi.
Hmm.
That'd be me. That happens to me a lot, but
But
so
yes.
yeah, it's a wonderful world. As I often say, it's a rabbit hole that just goes deeper and deeper. You can scratch the surface and that can be fulfilling. Or you can dive in and don't be afraid, don't be intimidated. You just
Hmm.
learn more and more. And again, as the Oracle of Delphi says, know thyself. Go
Hmm.
within, get that. What do you think this means? What wisdom does this bring up for you? Sit with yourself, sit with your cards, sit with your divination tools, sit with your divine, sit with your higher self, sit with your ancestors, invite in some wisdom. Take that time, take that space. That's the best advice I have to give with anybody who's curious about this stuff.
Hmm.
It's not scary, I promise.
No, it really isn't. And it's accessible to everyone.
Absolutely. Yes, open practices is
Hmm.
all. So, well, with all of that said, I just want to say thank you for listening to the Queer Witch Project. I hope you enjoyed our topic today. And if you like what you hear, always appreciate those subscription and thumbs up and 5 stars or 10 stars or 20 stars, however stars they'll let you give us. Get them. We just like hearing from our listeners.
Yes, always. And if there's a topic you want to know more about or an episode topic you'd like to suggest, contact us at thequeerwitchproject@gmail.com or find us on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram with the handle @queerwitchproject. We upload every other week. And remember, queerness is a key to magic.
Be yourself and love rebelliously. Bye.
Bye!